Hey everybody, Mark with Cardivox Academy here, and one of my students in our last lesson suggested I do some reaction videos. It's not really something I had thought about doing, but the more we talked about it, the more I thought it'd be kind of just be fun. So today we're going to be reacting to the new Cattle Decapitation track, One Day Closer to the End of the World. I chose this one because it's awesome. Like, let's be real, Travis Ryan's dope. He's when it comes to like brutal, the more dare I say acrobatic side of death metal and heavy metal and all metal vocals. I think he's one of the best. So we're gonna make this time valuable. I'm not just gonna play it start to finish and sit here and say, "Wow, he's so good, neat." We're actually gonna stop it every once in a while. I'm gonna break down a little bit of what he does. Kind of give you some insight into how you might be able to do it as well. So let's go ahead and get started. Boop. It's gonna be good.
Awakens in the reality, left stranded, hopeless, madness, an opportunity for failure. Death obsessed, infatuation with sensation, eternal rest. Request for death that by me has so close to the breast. Consigned with all my mind, this method was done. Just humans never learn our lessons. Possessed with deep aggression, suffering the great depression.
So let's stop right there for a sec. One thing I really like about Travis Ryan is that he's not afraid to play with midtones for the sake of articulation and clarity. So a lot of times in metal vocals, you will hear people trying to be as low and as gurgly as possible, and that's awesome. I think if you're going to do music like this, it's a skill you should probably have. But one thing that's nice is you can really hear the syllables that he's saying, and part of the reason way he's doing that is, well, there are two main ways that he's doing that. Number one is he's actually not using a lot of air for these vocals. We get the idea that when we scream, we have to be forcing air out of our body, but that's not really the case. So with these, I'd be willing to bet that if he just held that scream and like had a candle right here, he probably wouldn't even put the candle out, because he's using only the amount of air. This isn't important. He's only using the amount of air necessary to create these sounds. Anything past that is overexertion, right? And then on top of that, he is using wide, not strained, but wide mouth shapes to allow the enunciation to be there. Now, if you listen to these vocals, you'll notice that that comes at a bit of a sacrifice to the low, like, sound. But that's okay, because sometimes we want to storytell, or sometimes we want to go rapid fire. I mean, he goes really fast with some of these vocals. So, for example, right there, that's not taking much air at all. Like if I hold my hand up, there's not much going on. And when you do the proper mouth shapes,
When you do the proper mouth shapes, you can move very quickly and make it so people can understand what you're saying.
right? So that's something to think about, and he's really very, very good at making those two things work for him. But let's keep going. Let's not get hung up on one spot too much. So I know that some people don't like it, but I think that Travis Ryan's singing technique that he came up with, basically he came up with this. I don't know anybody else who sounds like this, is amazing. I love it. I think this is one of the great things about being a metal musician. I think, a lot of music, like if you're singing, rock music, or, well, rock music not as much, but rock music, punk, classical, if you're doing arias and stuff, there is a right and wrong way to sound, correct? And while that's true in these types of vocals, it's not as big of a deal. So there's so much room to play and so much room to explore different fun sounds. Really, the only two rules that I have for my students are that they're doing things safely right? They're doing things safely, and they're using their voice, their voice that they have naturally to the best of its ability. Anything beyond that, like, get weird. Try crazy noises. Who cares? So I'm not quite sure how he does this. I'm going to be honest with you, but I have a guess that I've tried to put together, and I think I'm pretty close. So I think what he's doing here is he's engaging the back of the tongue, closing the nose, and bringing down the nasopharynx, which is the back of your soft palate, to create kind of like a Lilo and Stitch Miss Jar Jar Binks. Stupid fat hobbitses, precious. You know, that kind of a voice. And then he's singing and adding distortion on top of it. Now, I don't sound as good as him with this because, like I said, I'm not quite sure how he does it. But, you know, if we take this voice right here, we take this. Right. We'll take this voice right here and we'll go. Something like that, you know. I don't quite have it figured out, but I think that that's on the right track. Because when we do that with our voice, right here, we can hit really high notes very, very easily without having to move the larynx. So I think that's the way he's able to do it. Raise up! Ooh. Raise up! Maybe that's it. I don't know. If anybody hasn't figured out, let me know, because that's as close as I can get, and it's not quite there. All right, this is actually a great thing to talk about. Sorry, it's a little hot in my house right now. This is a great thing to talk about. So a lot of times when I'm working with students who want to scream, if they're going from a mid to a low, or they're trying to do a low, what they'll do is they'll shove their larynx down as far as they can. And if they talk, they kind of have a Patrick Star. No, this is Krusty Krab, or no, this is Patrick. However that joke goes. So they're shoving their larynx down, and actually, you can make your mid or your low lower by doing nothing here, and not nothing, but not changing anything here, and then affecting the sound here. So he says, "Where have you been all our low?" Right, and he brings that down. So as I was speaking it, what I did was I kind of dropped my tongue, curled it, and I took an open mouth and I narrowed it in. Now, my voice got a little lower, right? But I didn't change it here. All I did was up here. It has that thicker, more meaty resonance. So,
where have you been
when we're making those changes, we don't need to do anything down here. You know, you don't need to give your larynx any more extra work. And that's something he's really good at. So I just wanted to point that out. You know, you can really change the tone of your scream with your mouth shape without moving around your larynx. That's the way you want to do it. And of course, always keeping the distortion up off of the vocal folds, especially when we're doing false chord. You don't need to use vocal folds at all.
One day closer to the final tragedy, burning like sentence of a hell on earth that we can't avoid.
I love it. I fucking love it. And you know, another thing, just to interject, another thing I like about being able to do metal vocals is like, you can storytell really well. Like if anybody's not familiar with Cattle Decapitation, which if you're watching this video, you probably are, their lyrics are very misanthropic. And so the message wouldn't get across as well if you were like, human beings are garbage. Yeah, we're polluting the ocean. Oh yeah. Right. That wouldn't come across. But with that, I mean, yeah, it sounds kind of gross and gritty and nasty, but that's kind of the situation they're trying to describe. I haven't read these lyrics specifically, but like if something's ugly, it's ugly. Sometimes you have to face things honestly to overcome them. Anyway, we're not going to get all philosophical here, so let's continue. That's That's another thing you can do to make your lows sound really contrasted to your mids or your highs. You can kind of scoop into them. Now, that's not a scoop of the larynx. We're not going, and it's not quite a glissando, but you're starting kind of throaty and moving the resonance forward. You know, and that can just have a bigger impact. So, you know, if you're a metal vocalist and you're able to do your tones safely, feel free to play around with moving the resonance around in your mouth. It's really a lot of the way he does what he does so well. I love that artwork. Really cool artwork. Did he harmonize that? I've listened to this a couple times. I never noticed that. We gotta go back. He did. He's like, you know, I could just imagine how this went in the studio. He's like, hey guys, I'm going to do that really nasty, kind of gross sounding singing. And they're like, okay, you've done that before. We get it. And he's like, well, I'm going to harmonize it. And they're like, you're going to harmonize nastiness. All right, Travis, go for it. And he did it. I love how creative this guy is. I mean, some people, they think he's kind of over the top and kind of kitschy. That's a matter of perspective. But whether or not you like his vocal style, you have to admit, this guy's very multifaceted. And I really admire that. Not that you have to be multifaceted to be a good vocalist. There are some vocalists who do one thing and they do it well. Like one of my favorite metal screams is Neige from Alcest and formerly Lantloss. Now, singing, he's all over the place, but his scream, he has really one scream, but it's one of my favorites because it's so emotionally honest. Anyway, let's not get off track. Let's talk about that high vocal. I love highs. That's where I started my metal vocal life. And one thing he did that's really cool, so one thing that's really important as a singer to learn, and I think that as screamers we could use it as well, and I'm not going to get super into it, but it's a technique. It's some of you may have heard it before. It's called messa di voce. That's not exactly, I don't think that's exactly what's happening here, but conceptually it kind of aligns. So it's the aspect of slowly increasing or decreasing your volume at an even rate, and it's really amazing because it requires a lot of coordination. You know, so. And you can do more with it. And I think that that's a cool thing to do in metal as well, because you can really bring people in with those pull-ins, you know, those crescendos, and I think diminuendo. I'm kind of blanking here on what the opposite would be. My apologies. But another thing about that, okay, so he does that, right? He takes that high. Now, when he's doing that high, it's super relaxed down here, and it's very tight. Not tight. Tight's the wrong word. It's very narrow. That's a better word, because tight insinuates muscle strain. That's not what we're doing. It's very narrow up here. So he does that. And all that distortion, you feel it like on your little uvula, your punching bag. Your punching bag. That's a medical term, people. And then so he does that we'll call it a diminuendo. He does that. The volume decreases. I don't think that's. I mean, I'm sure they have a studio fade out going on as well, but I think he did that naturally. And he also uses that mouth shape to make it sound really smooth and clean. You know, so see, you can use that mouth shape on top of it, and it kind of helps bring it down. So really cool. Also, another thing he does, we'll just talk one more thing about highs, is he pushes his highs up through his nose, and that's something that you can do as well. You know, so if you really get good at bringing that distortion upward and aiming that resonance at the top, you can actually do a high vocal and then close your mouth, and then it's going to be coming through your nose. So like and he does a lot of that, and that's part of the way he gets so high and so crispy like McDonald's Sprite. There was that mouth shape again. Fit for an autopsy, mirrors. That'd be fun. Maybe we'll do that one next. Okay, cool. So awesome. I love that song. I think it's amazing. Let's turn that off for now. Yeah, so hopefully this was fun. I had a good time doing it, kind of picking apart the song and explaining what he does. Now, one thing I just want to mention, you know, these techniques, this level of distortion, it needs to be worked up to. So if you're at home and you don't do a lot of metal vocals, like, please don't just jump into this. You know, make sure that you've got your breath support in line, that you've got your tone and your resonance and your distortion placed in the right areas. And if you need any help, if it's just not working or you're feeling pain, I do give one-on-one vocal lessons over Skype. I've got students who are into metal. I've also got students who have no interest in metal and they just want to learn to sing. And if you just want to learn to sing, hey, yeah, I can help you with that too. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. Many thanks. Much love. I'm out.